The Spin-Off Podcast Network.
Are you making the most of your KiwiSaver investment? Generate is an award-winning KiwiSaver provider with a track record of strong long-term performance. Making a smart decision now could add tens of thousands of dollars by the time you reach retirement. Book a no-obligation chat with a Generate KiwiSaver advisor today at generatekiwisaver.co.nz/get advice. A copy of the product disclosure statement is available at generatekiwisaver.co.nz. The issuer of the scheme is Generate Investment Management Limited, and of course, past performance does not guarantee future returns.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Your mask is colourful, Annabelle, whereas your one is a bit more stealth, Ben.
Mine's like classic Antifa ISIS recruit from the West. Bane.
Yeah.
Don't know if it keeps the virus away, but it certainly helps keep people 2 meters distant from me.
No mai haere mai, kei te whakarongo mai koe ki Gone By Lunchtime, Aotearoa's only politics podcast with Annabelle Lee. Kia ora, Annabelle.
Tēnā koe.
Actually, there's another one. There's Mihi Forbes has started one called, what's it called? Party People with Shane Tapo and Tau Henare. Mm-hmm. So there are now 2 politics podcasts in Aotearoa, Ben.
2 credible ones.
So welcome to Gone By Lunchtime. The kia ora to Flick, kia ora to our members, kia ora to Tina Tiller, who's over there, as ever, making sure that we arrive safely at our pod destination. 33 days to go. Oh, today is Ratu, September the 15th. 33 days to go. So we say that now because things change quite rapidly. We haven't had any massive pratfalls lately, so I'm pretty sure one is going to happen shortly. I mean, Jami-Lee Ross is still making a buffoon of himself, isn't he? He this morning he announced, very generously, he's announced that he's withdrawing from botany. I think it's because he's so far ahead. He doesn't want to humiliate Christopher Luxon and the other candidate, whoever that is, because he's so successful and so well liked that he's decided to generously withdraw from the botany candidacy.
Well, now that he's leading a mass movement against the one world government, he probably doesn't have time to be an electorate MP after the election. Probably needs to spend all of his time organising the people on the ground to rise up against the Illuminati.
Yes.
He said that it was shaping up to be a 3-way race.
And
this is a seat with about a 12,000 National Party majority, but he thought it was a very lockstep between the Labour candidate, and Christopher Luxon. David Farrer, the National Party pollster, said on Twitter shortly after the announcement that Jami-Lee had been polling below 2% in the electorate and was on his way to be thrashed.
Well, the thing is that it's a generous move, but one he can afford to make because they know, like, they're 100% certain that Billy TK is going to clean up in Te Tai Tokerau, so they can afford that sort of largesse.
They've got so many likes on Facebook, it's just a matter of transferring that into votes. On the one hand, David Farrer is the National Party pollster, so not exactly an objective source of information. On the other hand, Jami-Lee Ross is a proven liar and buffoon. So it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one to balance, isn't it?
He's a master of reinvention. Somebody said, he must be running out of his 9 lives, but I feel like he has infinite lives, that he's constantly reincarnated, and because of his terribly negative karma, it's always as a more lowly, snivelling life form with each iteration.
That is a slur on cats, I think, to even use that idiom. We've got a few things to talk about. We've got a frenzy of policies in the last week or so.
Oh, I've got a whakataukī.
Oh, hang on, everybody. It's Māori Language Week. And
It is Te Wiki Aotearoa.
cometh the hour, cometh Ben Thomas, the rangatira of Gone By Lunchtime.
I just thought that we should share a few. This is a favourite of mine.
Kōrero.
He ike kai ake iraro.
He ika kai ake raro?
Iraro, yeah.
Iraro.
Iraro.
He ika kai ake iraro.
Iraro.
Ka pai.
Yeah.
Kia ha te whakamāramatanga, Ben, what does that mean?
So that means a fish eats upwards from below. And the sort of metaphorical meaning of that is the fish that now lies dead on your boat started its journey towards death by nibbling on something far out of sight in terms of the bait underneath the water, unseen. And it means that from trivial beginnings, the fall of great chiefs can come. And now would be a good time to remember this because Jami-Lee Ross was once a National Party frontbencher. And because he was angry that he didn't get 4 promotions or something all at the same time, he set off this chain of events where he is now a disgraced former National Party MP, polling less than 2% in his former electorate, which he had a 12,000 majority on. He's about to be unemployed during a global recession, and he is leading a crackpot party full of conspiracy theorists.
Kia ora, Ben. You're going to have more whakataukī for us through the course of the podcast, eh?
Oh yeah, look, that one went so well, I feel we should keep going.
Definitely. Definitely.
I was saying we have a lot of policy to talk about. We have, among them, let's talk about that first, a policy from the Māori Party released on Monday, which calls for the renaming of cities and towns to their original Māori place names, and also for New Zealand to be renamed officially as Aotearoa by 2026. And interesting. I don't know whether or not how palatable that would be in the wider population, but personally, I don't have any great attachment to New Zealand. I don't know. Is that unpatriotic of me? It's kind of embarrassing. Like the flag is embarrassing, the anthem is embarrassing. They all need to change. But New Zealand, like it's a fucking province of the Netherlands.
I can see the fire lighting up in your eyes. This is just like when you started campaigning for Red Peak.
Literally.
I just wrote 2
the
columns.
embers are kind of lighting up within.
Literally, I reckon 99.9% of New Zealanders wouldn't be able to point to Zealand on a map.
We're the best in Zealand. Boom.
Can I just
maybe if we were better Zealand instead of New Zealand,
well, that's
that
right. What
would
if
be
there was
cooler.
like a reconciliation globally, and like New York can be York, and the original York is Old York. We get to be Zealand. They have to be Old Zealand.
Yes.
And just like there's 350,000 people in this province. Do you know? I mean, this sums it up. The capital of Zealand, I've done my research, in Holland, is called Middelburg. Like, can you see these people sitting around coming up with the names? Oh, we'll call it Zealand. And what shall we call our capital? They said in their Dutch way. And they decided to call it Middelburg.
I mean, that's essentially what Wellington is, right? It had to be halfway down the country.
Right.
That
yeah,
is
well,
Middelburg.
It is Middelburg.
No,
Yeah.
but, at least
be
it's
fair,
named after the great
When I lived
Māori
in Wellington,
leader,
it struck
Duke
me,
of Wellington.
It struck me as more of a Middelburg than a Wellington, really.
Okay.
But in both my professional and personal opinion, I think it's a fucking awesome policy that all parties should be adopting. I think a fair point has been made over the last day or two, which is that it's not about renaming the country, it's about returning to its original name. I think we've seen lots of
Is that true? Was it ever called Aotearoa? Really?
Well, I mean, opinion on that would vary from iwi to iwi, but I think certainly it's become the accepted name, and obviously has long historical roots with it being that being the name given by Kupe when he first spotted Aotearoa. I think we've seen lots of great examples over the last couple of years of names like, Aoraki, Mount Cook, Taranaki, Mount Edgecombe. Now, of course, there's going to be Karens and Bobs who are deeply distressed by the thought of it. But the reality is it's about making generational change, and there'll be resistance. But I think a lot of New Zealanders, and certainly young New Zealanders, will embrace it. And why wouldn't we want to have those beautiful names that are unique to here and not from, Middelburg? Also,
it will mean that if ever the Olympics are held again in Anglosphere country, we'd come out 8th. Between Antigua and Argentina.
Oh, can you imagine when you're doing your online shopping internationally, how much easier it'll be to put in your address?
The efficiency gains.
When you're doing your transaction on the deep web for that special content.
Yeah, the increase in productivity, it's massive. So many wins.
As a moderate centrist, but also an enthusiastic treaty partner, I tend to support alternate names. So, like as with Mount Cook, Aoraki, Mount Cook. So both names are the name. So I think maybe the halfway point is you'd move to Aotearoa in New Zealand, and then after time everyone would stop saying New Zealand, they'd say Aotearoa, just like nobody calls it Mount Cook anymore. And, that's the kind of sly sort of way of creating change by stealth that Don Brash has always been worried about.
Sam Neill had a great quote about the renaming of place names, and it's that every act of possession, which is what renaming a place is an act of dispossession. So there's a lot of meaning to returning those original names.
The other thing I just wanted to touch on, the Māori Party really do have a lot of policies, and they have quite big policies. They're very ambitious for a party that's looking at a pretty slim chance of getting one seat in the current election.
Yeah, I mean, it's Te Tai Haoru, isn't it? Where they're focused on most of all, but that could bring in 2 MPs. The thing I wish, speaking of the Māori electorates, is if only there were some debates being held, that we could see the candidates.
It's impossible.
It's if
you know what, you guys are in luck.
Oh, tell us more.
Wow.
Well, starting from tonight at 8 p.m, the Hui is going to be hosting 7 live Māori electorate debates in the lead up to the big day.
No.
I'm fucking serious.
Starting tonight,
8 p.m, newshub.co.nz, 3now.co.nz, Newshub Facebook page, Hui Facebook page. Replayed again on Saturday and Sunday mornings.
No.
It is all on.
I mean, this is the most exciting thing I've heard today, but I'm not totally sold. What's tonight's debate?
Tonight's debate, Ben, is the Tamaki Makaurau electorate debate, which features Marama Davidson, Greens co-leader, Penny Henare, the current MP, and, of course, the old warhorse John Tamihere for the Māori Party.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching both the live streams and the television replay on the weekend.
As Jami-Lee would say, it's a three-way race.
Speaking of renaming, what are we going to rename the wider Auckland region when eventually we are split off as an independent sovereign state? Given that yesterday, Monday, the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, being the Prime Minister for a moment rather than the Labour leader, announced that while the rest of the country would, I think, early next week move back into level 1, the sovereign state of Auckland will remain in 2.5 and then maybe probably get down to 2.2, 2.1. It's hard to know. It's that that decision was made. One of the interesting things about that decision was just as Ardern was speaking somewhere in Dunedin, I forget where, a press release arrived. She was still giving her statement. She hadn't even begun questions. And
mid-sentence.
It was mid-sentence. A press release arrived from Winston Peters, criticising the decision, invoking the old agree to disagree principle in their coalition agreement, but coming in quite hard. And he subsequently said that the medical advice wasn't followed in Cabinet. He's really kind of rattling that cage now hard, saying that he's been in the South Island, everyone seems fine, no one's obeying the rules, and they should be in level 1 now, and so on and so forth. Is that going to work, Annabelle?
You mean, is it going to work as in keeping them at level 2 as well?
I mean, as in, for Winston Peters
for
playing
Winston Peters.
this I'm the leader of the New Zealand First Party, adopting the oppositional stance.
Well, I think given that we're in the middle of the election, that it's to be expected, and obviously he is desperate to differentiate himself and to come across as the champion for the regions again. So I understand the strategy. Whether or not it will have cut through, I'm not sure.
This is a risk for the government. There is a bit of discontent out there that
The decision was a risk.
Yeah, and even the period before the decision over the weekend, where the rest of the country was sort of saw itself as paying the price of Auckland's, lack of attention to hygiene or whatever. I was down country a week and a half ago or something.
Middelburg?
Down country,
And,
I love it.
And I was
So rural.
and
Such a man of the land.
Where did you go?
Sorry,
it
keep going.
hadn't occurred to
Champion
me
of the province.
I was in the Bay of Plenty, and it hadn't occurred to me that people didn't really want to see Aucklanders. Of course, as big city folk, we're used to travelling the regions of New Zealand like big celebrities, essentially Hollywood stars, splashing around our urban
Cash.
dollars.
Are you sure it was related to where you'd come from? And
I was walking down the street, and this big mob guy, probably at 6'3", with a skull bandana and dirty dogs on, and I wasn't sure if that was just that was because he was worried about the virus or just fashion. He's like, "Hey, bro, where have you come from?" And I was like, "Wellington."
Middleburg.
Great travelling up the country, north. I mean, getting a bit close to COVID country, but nice to be here. And there is actually a lot of discontent elsewhere first of all, about the decision to let Aucklanders travel when the outbreak hadn't been contained. And second of all, now, South Island, there haven't been any COVID cases there. Their tourism is suffering. I think, like Winston said, I think most people's solution in the South Island is just to ignore the social distancing rules. But this will be more of a risk for the Prime Minister as time goes on. Whether Winston Peters can capitalise on it, I tend to doubt, because this undercuts his handbrake narrative. His handbrake narrative is that, I call the shots, I stop the government doing things that you, my plebs in the regions, don't like. But here he hasn't stopped it. He's been impotent. His strength came from being able to pull away the numbers that the government needed to pass legislation. Now they're making presumably majority cabinet decisions, and Winston Peters is powerless to stop the Prime Minister. So he's looking, more irrelevant each day. It could come in with, David Seymour has been beating this drum very heavily, actor on the rise. Judith Collins has been getting in on the act. National are not, they're well off the pace in terms of the polling that we've seen, but they're still, in the competition, in terms of getting votes.
I mean, one of the things, though, to say to that is that every time you hear people saying that this is very risky, there's a lot of pushback on this decision making. And then another poll rolls in that suggests that everyone is foursquare. Well, not everyone, but mid-70s to 80% of people support the measures the government have taken, and that happens over and over again. I have not seen anything since that decision. That's let that be clear. But basically, I mean, I'm just not sure how true that is, given that people also outside the sovereign state of Auckland will look at. It's a week, somehow once you can see it there, once you know it's coming, it's sort of somehow less painful. And I don't for a second want to understate the impact that it has on a lot of people's businesses. That's a very real thing. The other thing for Winston, I guess, Annabelle, is that there's a real political, or at least campaign motivation for him potentially, insofar as his bread and butter is those town halls. He is the champion of the town hall as much as anything else, and that is his environment. That's where he shines. He gets a kind of bit of a steroid boost from being in front of those groups. He famously, is the man of the Lions clubs, the RSAs, all that, and that's been taken away from him in level 2.
He's like the Beatles of town halls, isn't he? But you can't make your health policy. You can't make decisions around COVID based on people being able to attend town hall debates, can you?
No, my other question, I guess, about New Zealand First, I was thinking about this for the other day, is I'm not sure now if you were trying to persuade somebody just in an elevator pitch, you got a few minutes, what New Zealand First is for, what you'd say anymore. I mean, obviously the immigration argument has been inoculated. There's the provinces thing, right? Like it's the regions. I guess that's what it is, but it's just a hard sell now. There's a bit of with a handbrake. Is that really? I don't see how that really washes with a swing voter. Wear a handbrake. I don't know. It just seems very confused. I mean, no disrespect to the bad boys of Brexit, who obviously will be pulling it out of the hat, but.
I think it's, New Zealand First isn't necessarily great at telling their story well about what they have achieved. And I think, one example would be looking at free doctors' visits, free GP visits for initially, I think it was the under 5s, and now it goes all the way up to under 13s. That's a massive an important policy and one that they should be really proud of. And I think it's those kinds of policies that they need to be selling to the electorate this time around that they're not really talking about and don't really seem to have any. That's a pregnant pause. Fuck.
Well, I thought Ben was going to rip in
Just leave my
with something.
balls fucking dangling
what
out
else
there.
It's letting it soak in.
You can edit that out, Tina.
The thing is, it's very hard to point to. It's very hard for parties to differentiate themselves right now. New Zealand First, previously, their big selling points now, these weren't proving particularly effective, but this is what they were standing on, was we are shoveling billions into the regions and we're a handbrake on the government. Right now, they can't be a handbrake on the things that they don't like because it's, they're not going through because of legislation now that Parliament's risen. The second thing is there's just untold billions flowing right now. We're the $3 billion provincial growth fund, this bloated monstrosity of pork barrel politics, now is a footnote. It's marginal. It's a rounding error in terms of the money that's being pumped out now, almost on a sort of weekly basis. $500 million a week on the wage subsidy, for instance. That's the big ticket item. But then there's the shovel-ready projects. There's the, all the job start promises. There's free trades training. And suddenly a few roundabouts in Northland and a mussel processing plant in Aotearoa just doesn't seem as significant as it did. These huge numbers have almost lost their meaning to the electorate. The public have become sort of inured to it.
That's true, but at the same time, surely there is some territory available to the smaller parties, given that Labour and National at the moment are fighting over a very kind of middle bit of turf, Middelburg, you might even call it. National, like if you blind it out, as you can do on policy, by the way, which is genuinely very worthwhile way of looking at the different parties' policy offerings, policy.nz. If you blinded out the policies that have been announced by National and Labour over the last week or so, there wouldn't be kind of hard pushed to guess which was from whom, right?
Yeah, $3,000 start for the
newborns,
for the newborns and stuff. I was like, hang on a minute, who put this out?
Health-led meth policy, education, 6 million extra hours of teacher aid support, and
mental health training for teachers.
Right, this is the National Party, and then we're speaking, as I said, on Tuesday morning. On Tuesday afternoon, there is going to be an announcement from the National Party about dental care. Now, on the weekend, Chris Hipkins ruled out any shift on dental care from a Labour government in the next term. And that's an area that I think they have acknowledged that they had been looking at. So National could be, under Shane Reti, the new sage health spokesperson for the opposition, they could be about to plant a flag squarely in Labour territory by making some, even if it's not the whole way, even if it's just putting, a couple of $100 million into providing a dental health check a year for New Zealanders or something like that. It's an interesting play, right?
I'm so confused.
Why?
Because they're so, everybody's switching it up and
right.
Everybody could be everybody else.
It's not the Judith Collins that we were led to believe.
It's not very
coming,
crushery,
right?
It's quite kindy.
Ben, what's going on?
Judith Collins has always been pretty good at playing against type. She was the social development spokesperson for National before they got into government in 2008. And she was there, very caring and engaged and aspirational. And, the crusher persona suited her job at the time. So I don't think it's a surprise that she's quite versatile in a policy sense and in a presentational sense.
You would expect the crusher policy to be that if she catches you speeding in your car, she'll extract your tooth. Not that she's going to help you fix your teeth, eh? So this is...
Yeah. If you don't sign up to the contact tracking app, then we'll pull you over.
And remove your molars.
But I think you see that in the National Front Bench. The National Brains Trust is actually a pretty centrist one. And this is pretty clearly a strategy of looking like a government in waiting. So there aren't any, outside of that sort of $30 billion looking into the future crystal ball gazing transport plan for the Upper North Island that they announced. Other than that, it hasn't been sort of Hail Mary kind of Kiwi build sort of policies. It's been very much government in waiting. Here's some incremental change. Here's something you liked about Labour that we are going to continue. Here's something along the same lines, which is, it's a bit national infused. You get a voucher for your,
for your newborn care. Yeah. But isn't that
cash,
also a strategy that implicitly says we're losing? Isn't that a bit of a save the furniture strategy?
Well, I think it's the sort of strategy that Judith Collins would have run in any case if National had still been polling strongly. Yeah, because they would have been trying to present
it's certainly not the version of the
safe
National
pair of
Party
hands.
that people who were reluctant to vote for her in the National Caucus thought they were getting, right? That was one of the reservations, was that this was or is that a personality rather than a policy question?
I think factions in the National Party tend to be very personality-based, very personal ambition-based, rather than over great ideological differences.
Just going to throw it out there. I reckon Dr. Shane Reti will be the National Party deputy leader next election.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's kind of, we talked about this before, I think. He was there the whole time, He
was there the whole time right under their noses. They didn't even know he was a doctor. They were like, oh my God.
Are
you serious?
Wow. You went to Harvard? Wow.
Are you sure?
Have you got it? Yeah, we're just going to double check that. Let's not talk about Jake Bazant. Let's leave him.
Oh, no, I've got a whakataukī.
All right. Let's
go.
We'll just pause for a whakataukī for Jake Bazant.
So, do you want to introduce who Jake Bazant is?
Oh, yes. Jake Bazant is the National Party candidate in Upper Harbour, a safe national seat that has been vacated by Paula Bennett, whom was recently the deputy leader of the National Party. Jake Bazant is very keen to let people know that he was the co-founder of some parking digital thingamajingamy, Parkmate, I forget the name. And there have been questions raised, as outlined in a piece on Business Desk, the excellent business news website, that raised some questions around the verisimilitude of all of those CV details. Ben?
So the National Party have come out strongly, saying that they back their Upper Harbour candidate. These rumours have been circulating for a long time. And so the whakataukī is he kaora, koia, Kia whero wawe.
He kaura koia kia whero wawe.
Yes.
These are whakataukī deep cuts, by the way. These aren't just the ones that you find, on Pinterest.
None of this hey tangata bullshit.
Uncle Ben's like fucking done his research.
This means, are you indeed a crayfish who turns red the moment you're thrown on the fire? And that is said to a foe in a hand-to-hand encounter who boasts that you have not yet hurt him, which I think is a very applicable whakataukī for whenever a party or a candidate comes out very boldly against the first lot of allegations that surface about them and then say, I'm standing my ground and sticking by my story, not knowing what reporters still have up their sleeves.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Just slip that into your next conversation.
So, to return to that question of the National Party briefly, it seems to me, I don't know if anyone agrees, that essentially the Judith Collins and her team are thinking we have 40%. We should have 40% lockdown. That's even when New Zealand was deep in COVID, even when Simon Bridges was not liked, before things started going downhill, the National Party had 40% support. And so the idea is that the most overwrought cliche of recent times is steadying the ship, and that's what's going on right now. It's like we just need to get things steady, and then let's see in the last few weeks what happens there, but we just need to basically get that, convince those median voters that actually we're a safe bet. Yeah?
Yeah, but I think that would have been their strategy either way if they're heading towards the middle. If they were really worried about a collapse and they were really intent on saving the furniture as it was, they would be really focusing on crime. They would be focusing on traditional Tory hard stuff.
Oh, okay. So you think it's more ambitious to be going for the...
Yeah, there's another
ground.
whakataukī about that I can't remember right now.
Okay. Well, thanks very much.
About,
Kia ora, kia ora.
It's about you can shrug off the soft wood, but the hard heart remains. But it's to do with
Sounds good.
There was also...
yes.
Oh.
I know the one you mean.
What? The Labour Party last week, of course, announced its much-trailed tax policy, which, by most accounts, is the dampest of damp squibs. Essentially...
What's a squib, by the way?
It's like a thing that you used for lighting explosives back in the old days.
It's also like a satirical kind of stanza, isn't it? But I don't think that's the damp.
It's like a petard. The squib attaches to the petard.
The squib does not speak of its own sweetness, as they say. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
The tax policy, Annabelle, was, as Grant Robertson introduced it ad infinitum, was only to apply to the top 2%. It goes from 33 to 39 for people who earn more than $180,000. And it's going to bring in an estimated $550 million a year, which is basically what Ben Thomas gets paid for his PR work in a week. It's not a massive... It's sort of... Is it symbolic? What is it?
I think critics would say that it's fiddling around the edges, and while people will be disappointed, they probably won't be surprised, particularly after we saw Labour back off the capital gains tax last year. The thing is
It's an Achilles heel, in campaigns.
Yeah, but certainly Jacinda Ardern has more capital than an Auckland 3-beddie at the moment. But so you could argue that she has the ability to make some serious changes in tax. Whether or not that would come back to her. I mean, tax is always a hard one. It's always one that Labour can get smashed by National on, and with COVID, there's not a lot of appetite to be pulling money out of people's incomes. So you could say it's the politically smart thing to do. Is it the right thing to do? Well, that's arguable. I think what would have made it more palatable, though, is if we had seen Labour making some bolder, braver moves when it comes to beneficiaries. So again, what we see when it comes to their beneficiary policy is kind of more fiddling around the edges, moving up the amount of money that beneficiaries can earn if they have part-time work, but no adjustment to the core benefits. So Auckland Action Against Poverty has come out and really criticised their policy. They say that, only the Greens and the Māori Party have meaningfully engaged with them for their campaign, livable incomes for everyone, or whatever it's called. Sorry if I got it wrong, guys.
Wealth tax as well.
So, it's if you want to see, change for our poorest, most vulnerable New Zealanders who are now even poorer and even more vulnerable as a result of COVID, then you'll be having to look to those minor parties to do that.
It does have the impact in a very kind of base political way, though, of just cutting off the air supply to tax, right? Tax is not apparently going to be a live campaign issue, and you remember, I think you touched on it, Annabelle, but like last time we had Show Me the Money, last time we had all the kind of social media attack ads on tax. That doesn't feel like it's going to be a live discussion.
Yeah, and they changed their mind about capital gains tax a few times during the campaign. I think even once after early voting had started.
There was a captain's call.
After Helen Clark had already cast her early vote. Helen Clark may have, I don't know if she's still sore about that. Interestingly enough, I have a whakataukī for the tax announcement. This one is Taia tō moko ki te aha.
Taia tō moko ki te aha. He ha te whakamāramatanga, Ben?
That means, to what purpose was your face tattooed? And that means, why are you presenting with chiefly features like fine tattoos if you are brave, if you are cowardly and scared? And I think that is something that a lot of the progressive left will be asking of the most popular Prime Minister in living history, Jacinda Ardern, with all the capital of a pre-COVID Queenstown bungalow.
It's not transformational, is that what you're getting at?
No, I mean, I think we speculated last week before the announcement that they might be really cautious and conservative and put it at about 150 or 160k before the top tax rate kicked in. Now, 180,000, in real terms, that's about twice as high as the threshold that Helen Clark introduced a 39-cent tax rate at in 1999. The other thing is, in terms of raising revenue, the way that these higher brackets work is that eventually people sort of creep into them and more people start paying that top tax rate. Now, with Helen Clark, over 10 years, that was quite a significant number. It went from about sort of the top 10% to about the top 30%. Here, $180,000 in a climate where inflation is going to be close to zero, where there is going to be huge unemployment, wage inflation is going to be near to nil, for the next sort of half a decade or so. It's going to be 2% or 3% or 4% for a long, long time. The amount of money that will be raised, $550 million per year, and that's optimistic because that assumes that none of the self-employed people in that salary range will structure.
And the trust rate is unchanged at 33.
I mean, you could argue that this is another example of where if you covered the name of the party, you'd be confused about who did it because, we've seen the creation of a two-tier welfare system, massive corporate welfare, thanks to COVID, where we have the likes of Estee Lauder receiving, millions of dollars of taxpayer money. So I think a lot of advocates will be really disappointed.
It's good to see the Auditor General is going to be looking into some of that wage subsidy stuff. You touched on it, Annabelle.
Duncan Grieve wrote a very good piece for the spin-off about where some of the wage subsidy money ended up.
The spinoff.co.nz. You touched on it, Annabelle, but given all of that and that squeezing together in the middle, it should be absolutely acres of space for the Green Party, one would have thought, to really start building their vote. And they obviously had the Green School cock-up and setback. But, I mean, you know, they're still sort of languishing under 5%. There's a real threat that this time round that the offshore support, which is more than one occasion basically added a seat in special votes, may not be held up so strong this time round. What's happening? One of the things I wonder is I sort of feel like in campaigns gone past they've had that kind of, jobs, kids and rivers and again, it's bloody hard, right, to get that cut through, especially at a time like this when all of the oxygen in the room is taken up by the coronavirus. But do the Greens just need to go much harder? What do they do? And say we are the party that believes in welfare reform, that believes in people paying their fair share?
I don't know, it's a hard one, because like you, Toby, I thought with Labour's support strengthening that we might see people on the further to the left feel safe about giving their vote to the Greens, but that hasn't happened. I certainly don't think policies like the Green School helped in terms of exciting and mobilising their kind of grassroots supporter base. I think the policy announcement about climate change reporting perhaps might be, seen as a win and a bit of a palate cleanser.
Yep.
But in reality, firstly, it's confusing. Are they reporting on, are these big outfits reporting on what damage they're doing to that to the environment and therefore climate change, or are they reporting on how their businesses might be impacted by climate change? I'm unsure, but people don't tend to knock on themselves. So while it might be a symbolic win, I'm not sure if it's going to have a huge impact and if it's really going to excite their voter base in a way that more kind of grassroots conservation efforts and social justice efforts might do.
This is a very PwC environmentalism kind of initiative.
This is the announcement that was this morning that all companies above a certain level will need to report on their climate impact, right? Which was made by James Shaw as a minister rather than a pledge from the Green Party, which is in that slightly confusing territory, really.
And there was another announcement, I think, by Julianne Genter yesterday as Associate Minister of Health about the expansion of youth mental health services.
Yeah.
So the Greens have obviously decided, it was obviously decided that they needed to try and get a little bit more oxygen.
Well, there have also been provincial growth fund announcements sort of in the last week or so too, so it does get into that murky territory. The other thing, and the thing is, it shows that they have been very constructive in government. They haven't gotten those huge wins of the Provincial Growth Fund up until the Shovel Ready project, where they managed to secure a green school. But Julianne Gent has been an excellent Associate Minister of Health. James Shaw has managed to get some climate change legislation passed, with multi-party support. Jan Logie has been a very, very good Under Secretary on domestic and family violence issues. Eugenie Sage, a bit more mixed in conservation, probably hasn't lived up to members' expectations, but again, if you think about the Labour or New Zealand First counterfactual, and it will leave a gap if the Greens are forced out of Parliament. There are some very good people coming in for Labour. Dr. Aisha Verrill is the obvious sort of one. Barbara Edmonds has a lot of big raps on her, but I don't think, Michael Wood is a guy who I think was underutilised in the last government or the last term. Kitty Allen probably could look at a promotion. But I don't think that they have like a really high calibre of people in the Labour caucus, either the existing one or the incoming one, to fill all of those executive slots without New Zealand First and without the Greens. And so that's an ongoing risk. we've got coming in the next few days, it's very exciting, it's like Christmas, we've got the Prefu.
It's starting to feel a lot like Prefu. One more sleep till Prefu. It's Ben's most exciting night of the
He
year.
puts his stocking out the night before.
He
and
leaves some
it's-
cookies out for Treasury.
And then the next morning his stocking is filled with dossiers of fiscal reviews and what is it? The pre-election fiscal something? Update, yeah, good.
I was going to say Outlook, but then it would be Prefu.
Prefu. They
Think
should
about
have
it,
gone
could
for
change it to that.
prefect if they could have got, events and calibrated tables or something like that. That is of course, a way to kind of try and set a level playing field for the parties as they go into the crunch bit of the campaign with Treasury's tables, rather than after some stuff that happened in the 70s and 80s with unexpected opening of the books where people opened them and they got not the most happy Christmas surprise of all time.
Some got lumps of coal.
They did that. They did that. And then the day after that, we're going to see the GDP numbers, which is, which I think is on Thursday, which is going to paint the picture of just how it's going to be recession time, because we'll have the 2 quarters in a row that are in decline. But it's whether it's as high as 15% or something.
You don't have to be Jim Hickey to know that the outlook is shit there.
And then the other thing, hopefully, we will do a dance in prayer. We'll get a poll, because we haven't had a public poll for nearly 6 weeks after. And maybe it's time for some Radio New Zealand or something has to happen, really, because I do feel like quite genuinely, apart from providing us with fodder to get excited about, it is important for people to know where the parties stand, particularly with a electoral system that hinges on a threshold of 5%.
Yeah, Winston Peters would say it's better to take polls out of it and let people just decide on the virtues of the parties as they're promoted. Jeff Simmons from TOP would say the same thing. They would say, let's have a veil of ignorance where we don't know the strategic context of our voting, and we're literally just voting for the policies that we think are best as disembodied spirits.
And then some people who could afford polls and look at them privately would have them, and the rest of us wouldn't.
Which is the situation we have now, essentially, with political parties. But polling is very expensive. A good poll costs, 15, 20 grand. And that's money that is, in the old days, that would help you sell newspapers, or it would get eyeballs for your TV1 or TV3 news bulletin. Now, because of the internet, you've lost it as soon as it's broadcast. It gets reported on the Herald 2 minutes after you've broadcast it on TVNZ News. And so the economics are getting harder and harder for the news organisations.
I was informed that there were some polling for Auckland Central happening literally in person by a real polling company outside the Victoria Park New World the other day. So that's where we are. Annabelle Lee Mather is waving her finger at me, trying to wind this thing up in the interests of brevity and snappiness.
We've gone twice as long as what our producer Jane Yee said we should.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry, Jane. Merry Christmas, everybody. Thanks, Tina. Thanks to the members. Thanks to Flick Electric for keeping the lights on, and we'll be back next week with more political conversation. I'm Toby Manhire, and this is Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, a podcast in 6 parts.
Doesn't give my opponents much time to run up to an election, does it?
This nation is at risk.
What do you think you're up to now, you perverted little liar?
I could smell the uranium on it as you lean towards the
most radical overhaul in the history of New Zealand's administration.
Juggernaut, the story of the Fourth Labour Government, made with the support of New Zealand On Air. Listen now on The Spin-Off or wherever you get your podcasts.
Kia ora, I'm Duncan Grieve, founder of The Spin-Off. You can help us keep all of The Spin-Off's award-winning journalism free for everybody by becoming a member today at thespinoff.co.nz/donate.
The Spin-Off Podcast Network.